Can you believe this guy's doing another bass video?
Are you serious?
Yeah, and this one is about a bass he already reviewed.
What? What's his problem?
I know, right? And even after I posted a comment on his last video telling him what an idiot he is.
He's never gonna make it around here.
He's never going to make it anywhere, but he obviously doesn't. Oh, wait, here he comes. Don't move. I recently posted a review of the Sadowski Metro Express Hybrid 5-string bass, where I introduced a 100-point rating system. It's based on 10 criteria, each of which I score on a scale of 1 to 10. I've also come up with a price-to-score matrix to decide whether or not an instrument is worth it. More on that later in the video. The scoring system felt like a flash of insight I really wish I had come up with sooner, but I realized I could go back to the shame-inducing number of basses I've churned through over the past couple of years and retroactively score those instruments as well. This is the first video in that series. I'm starting with the most recent instrument while it's still fresh in my mind, since I only owned it for about 2 weeks. The Sire Marcus Miller V5R 5-string. In my initial unboxing video, I said I was 0 for 2 with Sire. I know a lot of people love Sire instruments, but both of the ones I've tried have had major deal-breaker issues. I started with the Sire P10, which made an excellent first impression. In fact, I gave it a glowing recommendation in my initial review video. But shortly after that, I had an embarrassing moment on stage where the bass completely cut out in the middle of a song. It turned out to be a design flaw in the output jack. After that experience, I was wary of ever trying Sire again. But I've been trying to find a decent 5-string, so I thought I'd give them another chance with the V5. Okay, that's enough of an introduction. Let's get into the review. Here are my 10 criteria. Design. I will never fully accept the weird headstock shape on Sire basses. I know it's purely aesthetic and doesn't affect anything about sound or playability, I just don't like it. That said, there are headstock designs I hate even more. Beyond the headstock, we have essentially an FSO. I love Fender basses, so of course I have nothing to complain about with the design of the Sire body. I even somehow managed to like how Sire handles a sunburst finish. Sire is definitely not reinventing the wheel here though, and the one original idea they had, the headstock, is not very good. 8 out of 10. Neck. The neck on this bass is really nice. The roasted maple looks fantastic. It has a great feeling satin finish on the back for easy playing with sweaty hands. The fretboard is exceptional. I really love the look of the block inlays and white binding on a rosewood fretboard, and those are increasingly hard to come by these days. Unbelievably, Fender has even stopped including them on the Ultra 2 jazz bass, and if there's anything distinctive about the look of the best jazz bass, which the name Ultra implies, it's the block inlays and binding. Fretwork on this neck was just about perfect, and for once I received a rosewood fretboard that wasn't dry as a bone and didn't need to be oiled. Great neck, 10 out of 10. Electronics. As I've said before, I'm not a fan of active electronics, which was part of why I went with the passive V5 line. I previously owned a Sire P10, and I really did not care for the electronics setup, especially the stacked pots, which were ridiculously tall, and I always felt like they'd bend when I put it in the gig bag. Here we have a simple, classic jazz bass setup of 2 volume pots and a tone pot. Everything works as expected, and there's a reasonably good range on the tone pot. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Pickups. Here's where this bass really falls down, and the whole reason I ended up returning it. I expect some 60-cycle hum on single-coil pickups, but this bass must have been wired incorrectly. There's very little interference in my basement studio, but these pickups produced the loudest hum I have ever heard in here. There was even a fair bit of hum with both pickups on, which absolutely should not be happening if they're wired correctly. The actual sound of the pickups was pretty good, but ultimately it didn't matter. I just couldn't get past how noisy they were. 3 out of 10. Cavities. Sire's cavities are very neat and appear to be shielded. It actually looks like a thick coating of some kind of plastic, but I suspect it's a layer of insulation, almost like electrical tape, over conductive shielding, either foil or conductive paint. I wasn't prepared to pick it apart to find out. I also like the fact that this bass didn't have a big open channel for the wiring of the neck pickup under the pickguard, so if I were so inclined, I could play the bass without a pickguard. That's a nice touch. The downside, though, is that the routings for the pickups were just barely large enough to accommodate Sire's smaller than normal stock pickups, and the replacement Bartolinis I ordered were a few microns too wide to fit. Pickups are one of the most common mods on instruments. You'd think that if Sire was so faithfully copying the jazz bass, they'd at least design this instrument in a way where you could swap in jazz bass compatible replacement pickups. The cavities are a mixed bag then. I'd give them a 9 if not for the lack of ability to swap the pickups. Since a pickup swap seemed like a necessity here, I'm giving the cavities a 5 out of 10. Hardware. Here I'm specifically talking about the parts that turn, tuners and knobs. The tuners on this bass felt great. Solid, very smooth turning, easy to get tuned up quickly. The knobs, well, I'm not a fan. They look just like standard jazz bass knobs, but the edges on them are very sharp. They don't feel good to touch, and I'm constantly turning my volume up and down. I'd give the tuners a 10, the knobs maybe a 5. I think the tuners are more important though, so they carry more weight in this score. 8 out of 10. Nut. I really only started paying much attention to the nut when I got a Fender Player Plus that had a really weird, messed up nut. The Sire has a bone nut, nothing special like the amazing Just A Nut 3 on the Sadowski I recently reviewed, but nothing to complain about. This nut was cut well and didn't have any issues, unlike the Fender Player Plus Jazz 5, where the outer string slots were so close to the edges of the nut that the strings themselves ran right along the edge of the neck and would easily slip over the side while playing. I give the Sire nut a 9 out of 10. Bridge. The Sire V5R comes with a through-body stringing option, which is nice, but not really usable for me as a flat wound player. Flats don't like to be bent at the sharp angle required for most through-body stringing. I appreciate that there are grooves to keep the saddles aligned as you make intonation adjustments, but I'm not a fan of the multi-slot saddles. Yes, it gives you flexibility to adjust your string spacing, but there are so many slots that it's hard to know if you have the string in the right one. I don't want to have to get out a caliper when I'm restringing the bass. That said, the bridge is solid and otherwise well designed and constructed. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Action. This bass came set up with very good action, about as low as one could reasonably expect on a 5-string. I didn't need to make any adjustments, and since I ended up returning it due to those pickup issues, I never had a chance to try out adjusting the truss rod or saddles. That said, based on my past experience with Sire and what I got out of this bass while I had it, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Sound. Ugh. This one is tough. I mean, the bass did sound pretty good. Here's a brief excerpt of the tone demos I recorded for my initial unboxing and first impressions video. Link to the full video in the description below. So I was able to get a fairly clean sound running the bass into my Focusrite for recording, although that pickup buzz did come through in a few of the clips. If the pickups didn't buzz so much, I would give the sound of this bass at least a 9 out of 10. But as it is, since I couldn't swap out the pickups without modifying the body, I'm going to generously give it a 7. Extra credit. As I established in the Sadowski video, I've got 10 extra credit points up for grabs, 2 to 5 points for a gig bag, 2 points for shipping with flats, and 1 to 3 je ne sais quoi points, just for anything that's extra special about the instrument. This bass did not come with any kind of gig bag, unlike the higher-end Sire instruments. It shipped with round wound strings, as 99.9% of new basses do. I'm going to give the bass 2 je ne sais quoi points for the block inlays and binding on the fretboard. I love that look, and it's increasingly hard to find in new instruments these days, especially in this price range. Final score. I'm working on a rolling scale of acceptability for instruments, mapping these scores against the selling price of the instrument. From my previous video, I indicated that a $500 instrument needs to score at least an 85. A $1,200 instrument needs a 93. Anything priced at $2,000 or more needs a 98. I decided to put together a full price to score matrix because I'm that kind of nerd. I bought this bass for $641. That means it needs to score at least an 87. Did it? Let's tally things up. Design, 8. Neck, 10. Electronics, 9. Pickups, 3. Cavities, 5. Hardware, 8. Nut, 9. Bridge, 8. Action, 9. Sound, 7. Extra credit, 2. Total, 78. Sorry, Sire, this bass did not cut it. That's why I returned it as soon as I discovered I couldn't easily swap out the pickups. Very disappointing because this bass actually felt really great to play, in contrast with the Sadowski, that sounded great and had a lot of innovative features, but just felt awful in the hands because of the weird fretwork. Anyway, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for more as I go back through the archives and rate the other basses I've churned through over the past couple of years. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, be sure to check out my Bandcamp, where I post full versions of the demo tracks I recorded for these videos, along with other original music. Thanks for watching.